Okay, you good?
We're good.
All right, bro, started.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our tour guide of the city of Chicago. I know there's not a lot of gentlemen here since this is a guy-hating tour bus, but I think I would like to have a great time.
Man haters united over here.
The city of Chicago is quite legendary, and there's things that you might not know about the city, such as the river flows backwards, or that this is where the skyscraper was invented, and the Twinkie. True. Everyone here in this, in this tour bus has either grown up or, or grown around the city of Chicago, and or have relatives that come in and visit or live in Chicago. From Chicago Fact and Statistic page off this City of Chicago website, accessed December 6, 2017, 40 million people visit annually to the city of Chicago, and 2.7 million people live in it. We, as a collective group, your tour guides today, have all grown up in the city of Chicago, or have grown around it. I am from the south side, and most of these people are actually from the suburbs, originally. So, in this tour, our tour guides right here, Ben, John Ryan, and Jeremy, they'll talk to you about things you might not know, such as in film, music, and the food. So let's get this tour started on a high note and kick it to Ben, where he'll show you on the right side the music scene of Chicago.
Awesome. So, back in 1917, during the Great Migration, black artists decided to move up north, bringing with them up to Chicago what was known as Dixieland jazz. And as this genre began to emerge itself into the new atmosphere, Dixieland jazz developed into the blues, a subgenre of jazz. And with steady jazz, artists like Jelly Roll Morton and Louis Armstrong, who were homed in Chicago, jazz opened its arms to the blues and paved its way during the 1920s and 30s. And thanks to Chicago, the blues has been the outcome of what happens when you pioneer amplification for instruments through electricity. And some notable bluesies, we have Muddy Waters, Willie Dixon, or Howlin' Wolf. They all adapted to this transition to electricity through music. It opened doors for them literally. I mean, this early form of electronic music was a hot-in genre at the time and was tremendously accredited on Maxwell Street in Chicago. Maxwell Street was an open-air market, but more so you could find gatherings of musicians playing blues for tips, so they were busking for money. These street musicians were later introduced to clubs, and club culture was a phenomenon that gave recognition to the earliest artists in blues and jazz, and was and they were extremely recognized in the south side of Chicago. If we fast forward to what Chicago has musically achieved up to this point, it can't be considered biased to one genre. In the mid-'60s, Chicago gave us both Earth, Wind, and Fire in Chicago. The band Chicago, personal favorite of mine, these are three of the records. This one's called 7, this one's 6, and this one's 8. Compilation of their greatest hits. But while those two bands, Earth, Wind, and Fire and Chicago, continued forth through the 70s, the band Styx kicked off its career in Chicago as well. And in the 80s, Chicago hosted a metal and alternative rock bands like Smashing Pumpkins and Naked Ray Gun. The 90s gave Chicago heavy metal from Disturbed and continued alternative rock from bands like OK Go and Wilco, all of which while supporting rapper Kanye West as he begins his music career in Windy City. As Crawford McKenzie states in an article, From Blues to EDM, Chicago Music History on February 8th, 2017, accessed on December 3rd, 2017. Like its people, Chicago's music is diverse, contributing to the city's growing rich history. And McKenzie is exactly right. As Chicago has fostered many bands over the century, it continues forth as a beloved music capital.
Thank you, Ben, for that beautiful crescendo of words that you brought us. The tour guide symphony, Ben. So now we're going to kick it to John Ryan, where he's going to take it into action and show you the film industry and the films that have influenced or have influences from Chicago.
Yo, what it is, guys? Man haters united. My bad. Chicago has a rich film history. Yeah, Chicago has a rich film history with movies coming out of Chicago, such as Barbershop. As Ben was mentioning, some of the rappers in South Kanye West we had Common, who was also in the ladies' barbershop. I haven't seen it yet, so Yeah, being filmed. We also had movies that were filmed in Chicago, such as The Dark Knight, everyone's favorite, like Batman movie. They used shots from the old post office, Chicago. Yeah, Old Post Office Chicago, the Franklin and Van Buren, and the Chicago Theater. Some of the actors coming out of Chicago were Harrison Ford, John Cusack, Gina Rodriguez. John Cusack was in every film in Chicago. Some notable films that came out were League of Their Own, based on baseball, a women's basketball team. So on and so forth. I'm not sure it's on here. Yeah, so First Business Day Off, Scarface, a 1932 version was made, not based on the one that we all know about the cocaine dude. So yeah, that's really it. Let's kick it over here.
Well, thank you, John Ryan. Now that the stars have shined in Chicago, let's take it over to Jeremy and see what he's cooking up in the food section of the tour. Come on, Jeremy, let's talk about it.
Good afternoon, everybody. As we continue our tour through Chicago, I'm going to tell you about some of the foods in Chicago. Now, obviously, we all know the big stuff: Italian beef, deep dish pizza, and of course the Chicago-style hot dog. But how did it all start? Where did we get these weird tastes? Why are we famous for this? Well, if you take a look on the right over here, you'll see Lou Malnati's, one of the greatest deep dish pizza places around. Now, Lou Malnati's started not through the Malnati family. Rick Ricardo Sr. and Ike Sewell were in the restaurant industry around World War II. They wanted to build their own pizza company, which ended up becoming Pizzeria Uno, another famous pizza stand around here. They were aiming for a big, brawny knife and fork food that they could show to Chicago. What they ended up creating was a 1-inch thick crust pizza, and they brought this to the people, and they hated it. They did not want to wait 30 minutes for a pizza. So what did they do? They went to the marketing team. That's how we got pizza in Chicago. They got the journalists on their side, and everyone loved it all of a sudden. So thank marketing for deep dish pizza. And now if we look over here, see a beautiful wedding. Speaking of weddings, that is where Italian beef came from. Strange, yes, but true. Back in the early 1900s, Italian-American immigrants would have what was called peanut weddings. Now these weddings were, the immigrants didn't have a lot of money, so these weddings were hosted in homes or in the church of a basement with cheap food like peanuts. And one of the foods they brought in here was Italian beef. What they found out was that if you sliced the thick beef cut that was standard, you could serve a lot more food, the same amount of food. So they kind of, multiply their food with nothing, somehow. Obviously that caught on. It also caught on with the street vendors of Chicago. Just a great way to make money. And speaking of that street vendor over there, selling a Chicago-style hot dog, another early 1900s food. It is also a great example of the Chicago melting pot. A bunch of different people coming together to create a magnificent piece of art. First, you start off with the German sausage. They create the hot dog, and eventually you have Jewish Americans creating the all-beef version of the hot dog. Now, what happens is during the Great Depression, this cheap food, everybody loves it, so they keep buying it because it's the only thing they can afford. However, they want to eat more, so they start putting stuff on top of it. So you got relish, you got the peppers, the pickles, everything, all that kind of nasty stuff, but it's so great all together. And that's how you get the Chicago-style hot dog. And as we come up here on our final stop, I'm going to leave you here with these words. Get an Italian beef at Portillo's. And that's where I'm going to go to finish the book that provided all this information. The Chicago Food Encyclopedia, published 2017.
Wow, what a delicious tour that has been. Now let's wrap this up like a Chicago-style dog, and let's get you folks out of here. Our tour guides did a great job. Good job by Ben, John, and Jeremy over there. Showing us all the amazing things the city has to offer, and things you may not have known about either the film, the music, or the food industry. So, I know it's been a long day, and it's been a pleasure having you guys all on this beautiful tour bus this afternoon. But we have to go. And as the Blues Brothers once said, oh baby, do you want to go to that same old place? That place is Sweet Home Chicago.